Hi, I'm Mike Gitlin. Welcome to another episode of our Capital Ideas podcast. We get to know the people behind the portfolios, hear from portfolio managers and analysts, lessons learned, investment edge, their ideas, and a bit more about Capital Group. Today we have Laura Nelson Carney with us. She's an equity analyst based in our London office. Join me as Laura breaks down how a scientist turned investor with global experience sees the future of healthcare and why her journey gives her an edge in spotting real innovation. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. You took an interesting path to get to Capital Group. Academic science, pharmaceutical research and development, management consulting, sell-side research in Asia. So that's just a really unique path before joining Capital Group 8 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about that journey and some of the chapters in that journey and how you got here?
Well, I think I'm a good example that career paths are not always linear. I followed what I was most interested in and the people that I was most inspired by. So I started my career as a scientist in academia, did a PhD and postdoc in neuroscience. The first pivot I made was to the pharmaceutical industry out of academia, which is something anathema to some academic scientists. But I didn't like that some of the people around me couldn't answer the question of why they were working on one very narrow, esoteric question for several decades. I wanted to be more connected to why am I getting up every day to do this?
The purpose.
The purpose.
Right.
And it was that everyone was working towards one common goal to develop new medicines, which was great. I loved it. Some years later, I met someone who worked at McKinsey, the management consulting company, who told me that they were looking to hire some people who had spent a few years working in the pharma industry. And I realized I was intrigued to learn about how the rest of the business worked. It gave me the chance to see sort of under the proverbial hood of many different pharma and biotech companies. The next pivot I made was into finance. I went to work in the sell side. And then I was recruited by my favorite client, who is a Capital Group portfolio manager called Eugene Chia, who remains one of my mentors and friends. He was making the transition from doing both jobs of being a pharma and biotech analyst and also a diversified portfolio manager. So I replaced him.
So knowing how, because you have this great background, you have a PhD in neuroscience. So you have this wonderful academic background, and that must help you as an investor in these companies because you're not just doing financial modeling, you also know the science. So can you tell a little bit how that shapes how you invest today?
It has a big impact. I guess while my career path wasn't linear, now I feel that I use all the things I did in those steps along the way every day in doing my investing role. The scientific part matters a lot. I lean into science a lot in how I do my job every day. It's about finding new drugs that can be big, can change the practice of medicine, looking into new areas of biology that are going to really be a profound benefit to patients. So I use it every day. I go to a lot of medical conferences.
And when you take along portfolio managers with you into the meeting and you're deep into the science and they're riding along, are they interested as much in the science, or are they looking forward to get back to the financials, or how do those conversations go?
Well, I guess I modulate the meeting a little bit depending on
where
it goes, depending on the who is in the room. But I think the best R&D leaders in pharma companies are able to articulate very clearly in a way that generalist portfolio managers can understand the strategy of what they're working on and why it may be differentiated, how it can make a difference.
Yeah, I guess they need to. You need to bring that EQ and the sort of layperson conversation into the room to make sure they can communicate the story.
And when I do the meetings on my own or with one of my biotech and pharma colleagues, I like to go.
Then you go deep.
10 miles deep.
Got it. Okay. So you lived all over the place. You lived in US, Europe, Asia, 8 years in Hong Kong. Did it shape how you think of the healthcare industry and innovation in general, just being a citizen of the world effectively?
Very much so, actually. I think it made me open-minded to the fact that innovation can come from many places. In biotech, there's been a long-held school of thought that if it didn't happen in Boston or the San Francisco Bay Area, it's probably not innovative enough to care about. And while I don't dismiss all of the amazing work that's been done in those two locations, there are many pockets of innovation in biotech now.
It's a big world.
China in particular is one that's really risen in recent years.
Is China super important in the biopharma innovation space? Is it today? Will it become more so over time? Give us an update on China.
Historically, it hasn't been. It's been a market where the pharmaceutical industry is about old, sometimes quite low quality generic drugs, traditional Chinese medicines, but that's all changed in the last 10 years, especially in the recent few. China is becoming a globally relevant source of innovation. So there's a wave of policies that began about 20 years ago, or well, the most important ones about 10 years ago, to encourage local companies to become innovative. So changing the way drugs got approved to prioritize the path for more innovative drugs versus the 20th generic drug that's the same as all the others. To begin reimbursing innovative medicine in the national government-run health insurance program, to change the way that capital markets work, to allow pre-revenue, pre-profit companies to access capital markets, changing the IP, the way the IP system works to create greater IP protection. All of those things took time, but they really have worked. There's a huge crop of emerging innovative companies in China, and bigger global companies have noticed they've been sort of shopping, if you will, in China, licensing, even acquiring companies there to augment their pipelines. Big pharma has long sourced about half of its pipeline and portfolio externally, meaning from academia, from small companies, by licensing or acquiring. And last year, by deal value, 48% of assets licensed were Chinese.
Wow, I wouldn't have known that. Is the Chinese government okay with that? You think about it in terms of them creating this intellectual capital and then having it being acquired overseas.
It's an industry that on a long-range plan, they see as important to be globally competitive and to contribute to the economy long-term. And becoming genuinely global means first clearing the path for global companies to be inside of China so local companies can compete effectively with them there, and then supporting them and starting to become more global. There are a few that have become more global already in their own right, but most of them, just like biotech companies elsewhere, they can only take drugs to a certain point, and then they need help of bigger companies, so they partner or license what they're doing, and the same is true in China. That's how they learn to be more global. Some of them have done 50-50 partnerships where they can learn from their bigger global partners about how to be commercial outside of China.
Well, I mean, you look at the auto industry and BYD and what they've done. China's emerging in some of these industries as super powerful and competitive. If you're a company that's headquartered in Europe and the US, you obviously can take advantage through acquisitions and licensing and partnerships, but do you also worry about the advantage China may have in terms of approvals, in terms of technology, that it's going to take share from you? Do you think about that when you're thinking of those companies?
I think it is a long-term risk. China has a speed and cost advantage in developing drugs right now. And there's a hunger and a work ethic that's a little different than in some big global companies. I find it so energizing to go to China and meet all these companies. They move so fast and they're doing so much.
It's interesting. It's changed a lot. When you're looking at a biotech or a pharma company, what two questions, sort of, what are you looking for? What does good look like? What are some of the things you see that say this has the foundation for something that could be super successful? And then what are some red flags that come up that you say, that's just not going to work?
Well, the answer is a little different for big versus small companies. For big diversified pharma companies, I'm looking for companies with a base business, meaning the sum of all the drugs that are already approved that they're selling, that is growing a little or at least stable.
Strong foundation.
Yeah, and then a strong R&D productivity and a pipeline that includes one or maybe several drugs that have the potential to be transformational, to change one area of medicine with a large unmet medical need and the potential to become really big drugs. Pharma stocks move on product cycles. Big drugs that turn out to be even bigger than expected and continue to beat the market's expectations. And the multiples move with the duration of growth, how far into the future you can see growth. It's an industry with an inherent cyclicality. We have a social contract with, society has a social contract with pharma companies to give them a protection from copycat versions entering 20-year patent protection. But it means that they become victims of their own success, if you will. Their biggest drugs lose patent protection, and unless the engine is very productive to be able to replace them with new things, they go through very painful correction periods as well.
Right upon approval, the clock starts ticking.
Yes, actually the clock starts ticking before approval. Usually patents are filed somewhere much earlier in the development process.
And what about the small companies? What there?
The small companies, it's about transformative science. Working on the smaller companies tend to take more risk and work on even more leading edge, newer areas than the big companies. Big companies access that leading, with some exceptions, but tend to access the most leading edge science from small companies. So I'm looking for great science, visionary leaders, smart development programs that are realistic and thoughtful about how the drugs will be used in the end. But it's also an industry where a lot of companies are acquired, a lot of drugs get licensed. So I pay attention to what I think big companies are interested in at the moment and over the next few years. Try to work backwards.
It's interesting because you have another colleague who will be a future podcast guest coming up, Judith Feingold, and you two travel a lot together. Can you talk a bit about how you collaborate? You have different responsibilities and different mindsets and how you approach things, but how do you collaborate and sort of collect the mosaic that you're looking at together?
Well, her responsibility is U.S. pharma and biotech, and me ex-U.S. So we collaborate a lot. It's a very global industry, more so than most. Cancer knows no borders. All of the pharma companies, big and small, are competing with each other, collaborating with each other, acquiring, licensing things from each other. So one of capital's competitive advantages is being truly global. And I think in this industry in particular, we can really lean into that. We have a constant dialogue, sharing little tidbits of information. Something I saw a small company in Japan is doing that's relevant to one of companies in her coverage is doing, or realizing that there's a trend in a certain area that bigger companies are looking to acquire drugs in. And it's been hugely additive to us, and it's helped us to connect the dots in ways that sometimes we've anticipated changes before others have.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit.
And it's fun traveling together.
Well, it's fun, but it's a huge benefit. Like you said, it's a big world. And there's so much innovation, splitting up that world, but then bringing it back together so you can share best practices and what's happening and data points that it might impact another geography. I think that's excellent. You were in an innovative space, and so it's humbling how much changes and occurs and the speed of those changes. What are some of the lessons you've learned as you've taken this on? You've changed careers. You've been at Capital Group now for a little while. What are some of the lessons you've learned in this journey?
Well, the biggest one is be humble and be hungry to learn new things all the time. But the ones that are more specific to investing, I would highlight a few things. One is about investing in small versus big companies. Small cap biotech investing is very different than investing in large, mature, diversified companies. It's a cash burning industry where these companies aren't profitable. Many of them are not even generating any revenue. So there's a lot of binary risk. They have one or two drugs in their pipeline. If it works well, the share price can go up 2, 3, 10x. And if it doesn't, it can fall 70, 80, 90% in one day. So
super binary.
So to diversify that binary risk, we can hold them in baskets rather than just holding one or two to create a sort of synthetic portfolio that has exposure to different disease areas, different drug targets, different modalities. But one of the lessons I learned is don't make the basket too small or it won't function as intended. If it functions as intended, you have one or two, maybe several that go up a lot, one or two that don't work out and fall a lot, and the others are somewhere in between. But after COVID, interest rates were high. It's an industry that depends a lot on public market financing. There was kind of a biotech winter. So I tilted the mix of smaller companies that I held towards those that are a little bit less risky. So a little bit later stage pipelines, maybe a little bit bigger pipelines, a little more cash in their balance sheets, maybe a little bit of revenue. And that was the right decision, but I didn't hold enough of them and the basket didn't work out as intended. And there was a little bit of, I sold some of the wrong things for the wrong reasons. I sold some of the companies where nothing had gone wrong with my original scientific hypothesis, nothing wrong with the data, nothing wrong with the execution. But because of the macro environment and a kind of risk-off mindset, it was tough for small companies. I sold them because of liquidity had gotten too low and the companies had become too small. But there were 3 of them that less than a year after I sold them were acquired by pharma companies.
So the
10x what I sold them
science,
for.
if the thesis and the science
thesis
still
isn't
works.
broken, don't sell.
Yeah, those are good lessons learned. A bigger basket to be able to withstand some of those less than stellar binary outcomes, and then getting enough right in there, it will give you a good return over time for the overall basket. You have a unique investment edge. Every one of our 400 investment professionals around the world in both equities and fixed income have a unique investment edge. So what's yours?
I think it's 3 things, 2 of which we've touched on already. One is that I've had the privilege to work in and around drug discovery and development in multiple different ways. I've seen it from different lenses, how hard it is as from a scientific perspective, how it works inside different big companies. It's hard. Change is hard. It's hard to make decisions that are big shifts. The second is I've lived all over the world, so I think I have a more global perspective than some others and more open-minded to seeing new things emerging from unexpected places. And the third is I have a strong stomach for volatility and risk.
Well, you have to. In your sector, you need to have that strong stomach for volatility and risk. Got it. AI, have to ask the question. Everyone is talking about it in every industry. Bring it to life for us in healthcare.
I think it's one of the tougher nuts to crack for AI. Human biology is very, very complex, and there are many parts of it that we still incompletely understand. I think that we're probably overestimating the very short-term impacts, but profoundly underestimating the long-term impact. And very specific to drug discovery, it will speed the process, it will reduce the cost, it will increase the probability of success. Right now, it's a tough industry. Only 10% of drugs that enter phase 1 clinical trials reach the market, and of those, only a fraction recoup their cost of development. So the attrition is high. Proving it even a little makes a very material difference. Every big pharma company is using those words and has hired people, set up AI teams in different ways, and is using AI in different ways. They all have lots of examples of pilot projects or specific use cases where you can see a tangible difference, but it hasn't yet rolled up to something that us as dispassionate public market investors just looking at the spreadsheet can see in the totality of the company's P&L that it's changing the return on R&D investment or the timelines or anything like that. I think it will, but it will take time. And there are a lot of small companies emerging as well that are focused on AI drug discovery, and there's a few of them with drugs in phase 2 clinical trials that were discovered by AI.
And so if we fast forward 10 years, and I agree with you, I think there's an underestimation of the long-term impact as it relates to healthcare. But can AI change life expectancy if you look out 10, 20, 30 years?
Probably. There's a part of biotech that's focused on longevity, trying to figure out how to slow cellular aging and how to increase healthy lifespan. Looking backwards, it's been kind of a graveyard of tough companies that didn't really work out. Living longer isn't an approvable indication with regulators like the FDA, but treating the diseases associated with aging is. I think it probably will.
So what are you most excited about? There's lots of new science out there. What are you most excited about?
Well, one of the reasons I love working in this sector is that it profoundly affects people's lives, and there's always something new. And we're in a period of something of a renaissance of innovation in this space. So there's a lot of new things going on that are exciting, but a few that I think are important and I've been spending time on are one is a little bit outside of my narrow pharma and biotech focus, but there's been a lot of innovation in the diagnostic space, and moving towards diagnosing disease earlier means that drugs we develop have a greater potential of having curative intent rather than merely managing symptoms or slowing the rate of decline. This is particularly true in cancer, but also in other areas. A second is that the emergence of cells and genes in medicine, as medicines, which began some years ago, is really important, as important as moving from chemicals to proteins a few decades ago. One area of genetic medicine that I think will have a huge impact is called interference RNA. This is a way to silence genes without cutting the DNA, which brings some risks. And it lends itself well to treating big chronic diseases because it can be dosed infrequently, monthly, quarterly, even yearly. Is relatively cheap to manufacture and can be used in many different ways. So the first generation of companies like Alnylam, Arrowhead, Dicerna really pioneered this field, but there's an army of more than 50 companies in China that are working on the next generation approaches as well. So figuring out how to deliver to different tissues beyond the liver. The first ones are all delivered to the liver, and working on new targets.
So that's really early. I mean, that's something that's early on and will take
6 or 8 RNAi drugs approved already.
Okay.
The first generation.
And this long-term application, you think that's going to take, if you look at 6 or 8, is it 20 or 40 in the next few years, or is that going to take another 5 to 10 years? Trying to give folks a sense of where we stand.
The pipeline is huge. In the 2030s, we'll see many of these drugs approved.
Got it.
So those that are liver targeted, we'll see a bunch of approvals between now and 2030. And we're seeing those targeted towards other tissues, brain, heart, lung, adipose tissue, muscle. They're all phase 1 are the most advanced ones. So.
Okay. Well, we'll watch that. 2030. Capital Group turns 100 years old in 2031. We'll measure both at the time and see how both are doing. Okay, I'm going to take a little break from that just to do our office treasure hunt. I think this is, I love all the office treasure hunt things we find, but I found this one to be one of the most interesting ones in your office. It's also on the screen behind us, but most people listen. Will you describe what I have in my hands and what's on the screen behind me?
It's a framed photo, a magazine cover from Time magazine in 1959. It's my grandfather. His name's Columbus Island, and he was a prominent oceanographer. It's got some ocean scenery and some ship equipment and a picture of a big ship that he sailed around on. But he died before I was born, so I never met him, but have always been fascinated by him, which is why I keep that in my office. He's one of the reasons that I wanted to become a scientist, in addition to my own father was a scientist too.
It's just amazing. July 6, 1959, the magazine was 25 cents at the time. And to have your grandfather, who's an oceanographer, on the cover of Time magazine, super cool. Thank you for
he's
sharing
a professor at Harvard, and he ran the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And if you go there, you can still see his name on plaques around the place.
That's not too far from a place I visit often. I'll go and check that out. Mentors. Can you give us 1 or 2 mentors that have changed your career?
I'll bring the one that I spoke about before, Eugene Chia. So he is why I'm here at Capital, and he continues to be an important mentor for me. Travel with him often. We have lots of discussion and debate about science and pharma and biotech companies. But what I really learned from him and love about him is the clarity with which he sees the world and sees what matters. He's been a really great pharma and biotech investor. I've learned a lot from him.
Excellent. We're going to finish up with 2 things. One, we're going to do 2 truths and a lie. So these are fun facts about you, and one of them is fake news. So I'll list them. You got your pilot's license when you were 17 years old. Your home has a bunch of 2s. 2 kids, 2 dogs, 2 horses, probably 2 other things. And you were born in Australia. Which one of those is fake news, Laura?
The third one. My husband is Australian.
Okay, so all the other ones are true, and your husband is Australian. I wanna show you a picture. Last thing before I ask you what you're grateful for, and I'd love for you, also from your office, I would love for you to take it and describe it for folks who are listening.
This is a photo of me when I'm 17, standing with my father on the wing of a single prop plane. So I got my pilot's license when I was 17, private pilot's license in a single prop plane, and he did as well at the same time.
So do you still Do you still fly? If not, do you want to return to it? Is it a passion?
I let it lapse when I lived in Hong Kong because there was nowhere to go and I couldn't enter Chinese airspace. I would
Well, you
love
could,
to.
but it wouldn't have turned out very well. Yeah.
I would love to come back to it. I really, really enjoyed it.
We're going to finish up with what you are grateful for. We have our Capital Ideas mug, our gratitude, Be Obsessively Grateful mug. We will send it to you in London. We will not make you put this in your carry-on, but I will hand it to you and ask you to share with folks what you are grateful for.
Well, I'm grateful for my family. I have a husband and 2 wonderful teenage children who have been really supportive of me. This is not a 9-to-5 job, and I love it. So they're understanding about me, always thinking about work and stocks, and they have all of their own passions and adventures as well. I owe a lot to my parents. They were very supportive of me early on. I mentioned my father in the photo as a scientist as well, and a big part of why I wanted to be a scientist. He taught me about entrepreneurial spirit and taking calculated risks, and also about the value of compound interest very early. My mother as well taught me a lot about hard work and perseverance.
Well, I am glad we found you and you found us, because having your experience from everything you did before you came to Capital Group, taking that, translating that into finding great companies that can benefit our clients is super important. So I'm glad you found Capital, we found you. You're doing a great job here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and spending some time with us.
Thank you very much for having me.